backwards, I take it for granted that we can sit here and talk, but 60 years ago, that wasn't the case at all.
Well, I know Gadi has a story of when he first ran into his friend Father Roy, and Gadi's own knowledge of Christianity. You know, I know he doesn't tire of talking about it, and I wish he would say something about that. As a Jew coming into contact now with, you know, a Christian and a priest to start with.
No, it really is. It opened a lot of horizons for me in that sense that I didn't even know existed. A lot of the explanations is that, you know, Christians need to understand Judaism, to understand themselves better, but it goes backwards too, or the other way too, because I understand Judaism now much better because I have knowledge of Christianity and the journey. It really is about the 2,000 years journey. Don't forget that the Judaism that I'm a product of, and we're really, everybody that lives today and calls themselves a Jew, they are a product of rabbinic Judaism that was born in the first century too, with Christianity. So we are, in a sense, cousins. And I would say that that's why the heated, you know, passionate disagreement, because it's a family, you know. And what really makes us family, you may agree with that or not, but the text. It's the text. Judaism and Christianity share the same text. And you can't run away from that. You know, establishing relationship with Islam is great, and Muslims, and we do that through Project Genesis, but we don't share the text at the end of the day. So that's really, it grounds our relationship. So I think we've tried to kind of resist it because it was constricting for both. You know, for Judaism to accept Christianity was restricting because it would admit its own failure to recognize its own Messiah. You understand? Judaism has a built-in problem with accepting Christianity. And Christianity has a built-in issue with accepting Judaism in terms of the successionalism. That if the church really has a new covenant, a new testament, it means that the Jewish Testament or the Old Testament is as we call it, Old Testament, and maybe it should be somewhere on the top shelf somewhere. But then Christians understand that, of course, they can't leave it on the top shelf. They have to understand. So this is it's amazing, this type of relationship that really, I think, catapult both of us forward in what we need. Judaism needs, politically, it needs Christianity. So for today, to after we battled with our built-in issues with each other, we realized that it's a waste of time. And when we started the conversation with Father Roy, we said, let's start with what we agree on. And we still, 16 years later, still talk about what we agree on. So the point is exactly to change the conversation, not to avoid what we disagree on, but concentrate on what we agree on, right, that is constructive. And for the church to do this, it really is like a tshuva in Hebrew, to repent, to do a kind of a 180, and that is incredible.
I think an important image for us to see in terms of the relationship of Judaism and Christianity. You have an olive tree, right? And the trunk of that olive tree we refer to as biblical Judaism. The branches of that tree are, on the one hand, Judaism, but rabbinic Judaism. the Judaism that took hold after the destruction of the temple. All right? In other words, the temple was gone, and the authority was rooted in the rabbis and in their commentaries. So you have that branch.
Which was already part of Jesus' preaching, that leave the structure, the temple, the building alone. Concentrate on the people and on justice and social justice. So in a sense, Judaism and Christianity became homeless at the same time. They were both, had to now find their way in the world. And of course, within the context of the Roman Empire. And they were both persecuted minorities for a long time, right? They shared it until the 3rd century, the 4th century.
And then what happened was that, don't forget, the first Christians were Jews. So they were part of this structure. The element that was new was the grafting onto that original group of what we would call Christians today, of the Gentiles. So you have then this tree, but grafted onto this tree, going one way, all right, are the followers of rabbinic Judaism, and on the other hand, you have Christians as part of the trunk of that tree. They're all part of the same tree. And in fact, in the early church, a lot of people, I think, especially Christians, believe that right away there was this split that between Jews and Christians. But what people don't realize, that during Jesus' time, the controversy was, first of all, this is a family, and within this family, we're trying to decide whose interpretation of the Torah are we going to follow. Is it the interpretation of the Pharisees and the rabbis, or is it the interpretation of Jesus? So all of the early church controversies, the very early church controversies, were centered in the same family, all right? Until maybe in the last decade of the 1st century, that you begin to have the splitting off, if you will, of the Christian sect from the Jewish sect. But this was a family feud in the early church. Jesus did not come to found a new church. That was not his intention. Jesus came as a Jew, and he came to fulfill the prophets. And then, like happens very often when there's a family feud, there tends to be breaking off. And that was the element that existed in the early church. But from that, then you have all of the controversies that built up, which started in the family but now have extended. And so, it's the Hatfields and the McCoys. And in a certain sense, that's what Christians and Jews are like today, the Hatfields and McCoys. Right?
But it's something that, it's not just not fighting. The prophecy in Isaiah that says at the end of days, people will not, that ultimate peace, and the lion will lie with the lamb. And it says, they will not learn war anymore. It's not that they won't fight. It's one thing to accumulate weapons and just sit on the line but not fight. That's not what it's about. Here, there's almost a harbinger to the way that the prophecy looked at peace at the end of days. It's not just not fighting. It's about changing the language of not learning war anymore. That the language is not about we're just not fighting because we have all kinds of interests reasons not to fight, but because we really understand that we have to not learn war anymore. So it means concentrating on what we agree and not what we disagree on.
And hatred is a learned behavior. We know that.
Yeah?
We're not born with hatred. Look at the way young children play with one another. They don't care about the color of a person's skin or what religion they are. Hatred is learned, right? And the more it's learned, the more demonic the other side becomes. And once you begin to demonize the other side, the only way, some people would say, the only way we can get the way we want is to exterminate the other side. And unfortunately, there are many people in the world today who feel that that's the way to go. That you can only have peace if you destroy the other side. We know from history, and apparently and unfortunately, Americans are not very good when it comes to understanding history. Right? We know from history that annihilating the enemy doesn't work. Right? Even in the scriptures, Jesus said after he got rid of some demons, demons returned to the exorcised person sevenfold and even became worse. So, we have to stop teaching people how to hate.
Well, it's a good way to conclude our session, and so let's take a few minutes if you have some questions, and then we'll talk about next session. Well, also what we should do is we'll share those documents with you via email.
We can do
We'll
that.
send it on Constant Contact,
Okay.
so you can have those. So these are such important documents, and it's shockingly a very short document. But what it says is basically when you're ready to engage, you don't need a lot of words anymore. All the words have been exchanged for 2,000 years in different ways, and so let's just do it. Always, the people ask me, "Do you really believe that God could have created the world in 7 days? This whole thing in 7 days?" And I said, well, from my experience, if you plan for eternity, just to do it is not a big deal. It's the planning. So I think it was time, and it matured. It was in the right place at the right time.